I'm Ron.
I'm Don.
And this is the Ron and Don Show. Thanks for joining us today. As many people who know Don may already recognize, Don has been lovingly called the Professor. And Don, why don't you tell us why they call you the Professor?
I interrupted my boss once when he was doing a training class for MITs, managers in training. And so I interrupted him and started talking about his topics, and I pretty much took it over. I was wearing a sweater vest at the time, so he nicknamed me the Professor.
Thank you, Professor. Today's topic, have we got some dirt for you?
Oh, that's just so nasty.
Today we're going to talk about walk-off mats. Not having a walk-off mat in a restaurant and what it means to your carpet.
And also not having proper removal of soils and moisture coming into the restaurant and what it does to your carpet and all your other floors as well.
Okay, so let me take you on a path. Let's start at the server alley area of the back of the house. If you can imagine, you've got your servers during peak times running back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room. And we're going to make an assumption here that you've got servers in your restaurant to begin with. And we're also going to make an assumption that you've got carpet in your dining room. So what happens when the servers are going into the back of the house areas where we'll assume, for discussion purposes, that you've either got a quarry tile floor or one of the other epoxy type floors back there. Ultimately, those wet areas are great areas for the collection of grease and dirt and water.
One of the problems, we're going to start in the very back of the house, is that the servers go back to the back of the kitchen to get items. But all the cooks and the prep cooks and the dish people have got moisture and grease all over their feet from working in these areas, and they track it throughout the back of the house. Servers go back there, they get it on their feet. They walk it out into the service alley or wherever else they're going. And then eventually you'll have a fine layer of grease and or moisture everywhere. It'll be tracked out into the guest areas. And this can be particularly hazardous if you have wood floors and some kinds of ceramic floors, because they'll get a fine layer of grease on it. And I don't know how many times we've had people slip and fall on those floors. You can track that grease all the way out onto the carpet, and you'll get spots of grease about this big around that are just hard impacted grease that is very difficult to get out of the carpet when your carpet cleaners come in. You have to use high temperature extraction and a lot of chemicals to clean that up once that happens.
So in addition to the life safety issues of slip and falls and guests or crew members getting hurt, we've also got the concern of the overall appearance of the house, of the front of the house as it pertains to the cleanliness or lack thereof of the carpet.
Have walk-off mats, either permanently installed or temporary ones. But please, if you have permanently installed ones, don't put a walk-off mat over the top of that permanently installed one when it becomes wet or dirty. Change out the permanently installed one or get it cleaned, or have somebody vacuum the moisture out of it and figure out why you're getting all the moisture in there to begin with.
Defining what a walk-off mat is, first let's take the area in the back of the house, which represents the last area the servers and their feet will touch before they leave or exit the back of the house and enter into the front of the house areas. And that's generally the point between the server alley and the entrance into the dining room.
I would recommend that you always make it the full width of that passageway, assuming it's 4 to 6 feet wide, and it should be at least 6 feet long. That makes it so that you get your feet on that mat twice before you exit, and you have a chance to get as much of the soils and the grease off of your feet before you exit.
So take a look at this graphic. What you can see here is that we've got a quarry tile floor where we've removed areas of the quarry tile itself, built the subfloor, the substrate up to an elevation that allows the walk-off mats to then be installed into the designated area and have a finish elevation that is comparable to the adjacent quarry tile. That way you don't have a trip issue or a toe stubbing component there.
We generally install these with a very slight pitch of the quarry tile up to the walk-off mat, so when they're cleaning the quarry tile or any other adjacent hard surface floors, that the floors themselves don't flow that water into the walk-off mat and actually degrade the mat's capabilities and get funky smelling and all kinds of bad things.
So pitch for drainage is
So,
what we're describing.
Yeah, pitch away from the mats as best you can for drainage.
Now, what we use is a pressure-sensitive adhesive for the actual material that is the walk-off mat. And what that basically means is that adhesive bonds the walk-off mat to the substrate, but not in such a way that you can never get it back up again. So if gripped with a pair of simple pliers, these mats, these squares can be picked up, thrown away, and new squares put in their place.
Think of a Post-it note, an adhesive that can be removed, and in some cases, unless it got totally soaked with water, can be reused without having to put a new adhesive down. Sometimes it gets totally soaked and that stuff turns from glue to goo, and you got to scrape it up, get it all cleaned up, and put down new adhesive. Generally speaking, these adhesives take several hours to cure. You don't put it down in the wet adhesive because you'll permanently stick it down. You let it cure, and it's like what's the contact cement that you can release and pull apart again.
Now, what Don is saying is that ultimately the ongoing maintenance of this area is going to be a burden put onto the operators of the restaurant. So it's important that they be given clear instruction on the front side of the installation of these things so that they know what they need to do and how to do it, and frankly have the tools to do it, to be able to do it on an ongoing basis.
Then the front door items, you need to have a permanent front door mat, but you also need to have additional mats because on rainy, snowy days, you'll need to have additional mats inside your space to collect the overage that doesn't quite get taken off completely on the permanent mats between your front doors or in a vestibule area.
I think the same too applies in Florida, so you can get the sand out of your flip-flops as you're walking in.
Exactly. And then when those are done, you roll them up, get them out of the way, send them off to the cleaners. They return them as part of your linen service.
So back to what Don had mentioned earlier, we talk about the effectiveness of a walk-off mat. In order for it to truly be effective, the personnel, the servers walking out of the back of the house area need to get 2 full steps onto the walk-off mat before they exit the back of the house area and then start walking on the carpet or whatever the front of the house floor surface is.
The last thing that really will help your life of your walk-off mats is keep your back of the house floors clean. If you can run a mop through the back of the house in between shifts, that'll keep the amount of grease that is going onto the shoes of the front of house staff to a minimum. And the other thing is make sure all of your staff have shoes that are not grease absorbent. And if they are, they're not safe for your restaurant to begin with, and you might want to reconsider their footwear.
And I'm going to offer one final suggestion too, that when you're laying out and planning to install walk-off mats in the back of the house area, think too about the long-term maintenance requirements. The last thing you want to do is make it overly invasive, if you will, for the operating team to have to trim walk-off mats. So you certainly want that 2-step runway, if you will, in the walk-off mat area. But think too, when you're laying this thing out, about the size of the mats themselves. And if they're 24 inches by 24 inches, stay as close as you can get to 48 inches wide or 60 inches long, or whatever is a multiple or works well, so that whole tiles are going in as opposed to tiles that have cuts with them.
But don't end up with a strip this wide of Croy tile along the wall, because it'll never be washed. Or if it is, it'll soak your mat and defeat the purpose.
So there you have it, a couple of hints for ways to be even more successful with your walk-off mats. I'm Ron.
I'm Don.
Thank you for watching yet another episode of the Ron and Don Show. How do they get a hold of us if they want to send us some questions or?
I think a string and tin cans works best.
Well, that's not standard operating equipment for most people anymore.
Try that.